The clock on my nightstand glowed 4 a.m., like it was mocking me. I was already awake, half from nerves, half from the kind of work stress that turns your brain into a hamster wheel. Monday's presentation was sitting in my chest like a stone. I'd been rehearsing slides in my head for hours, trying to calm my breathing. Then my phone lit up. Ethan. My husband. For a second, my thumb hovered over the screen like it didn't want to know, like reading it would make something real that I'd been pretending wasn't. The message was short, wrong, somehow, even before I understood the words. Emergency came up. Don't worry, I'll explain everything later. I stared until the letters blurred, my eyes burning from the dryness of sleeplessness. Ethan, who corrects my text when I accidentally type it's instead of its, had just sent me a vague, sloppy message at 4 a.m. from wherever the hell he actually was. He was supposed to be at his sister Jennifer's apartment. Guys' weekend, he'd called it. Pizza, movies, brother-sister bonding, as if that phrase didn't sound ridiculous coming out of a grown man's mouth. He'd promised he'd be home Sunday morning. He always promised that lately. Always another hangout, another crisis, another reason he couldn't be reached. And here's the part that scared me most. I wasn't surprised. My stomach hurt, sharp and cold, but it wasn't shock, not really. More like the moment a storm finally breaks after weeks of thick, heavy air. For 2 months, the signs had been blinking in my face. His phone started living face down on every surface. He'd begun showering the second he walked in, like he needed to rinse off the night before speaking to me. He'd started pointless fights, over dishes, over tone, over nothing, then stormed out like he needed an excuse to be gone. I sat up in bed, the sheets twisting around my legs, and I felt my pulse pounding in my throat. I could have called Jennifer right then, but I already knew what she'd say. So instead, with my hands shaking so hard I had to steady the phone against my knee, I typed, "No explanation needed. Stay with whoever you're with. Consider yourself single." I hit send before my brain could beg me to be softer. The phone instantly started vibrating, call after call after call. I declined everyone. Then I flipped it to silent. 25 minutes later, tires screamed into our driveway. Then pounding. Then the doorbell. Over and over, like someone was trying to break the sound itself. I took my time, put on a shirt, ran my fingers through my hair, walked down the stairs slowly, each step heavy and deliberate, my heart thudding like it wanted to escape. Through the peephole, I saw him on the porch. Ethan, still in the same dress shirt he'd left in yesterday afternoon, wrinkled now, collar crooked, hair wrecked, eyes red, face shining with sweat and tears. "Please, Linda, open the door," his voice cracked. "I can explain. Just let me explain." I opened the deadbolt, left the security chain on, and cracked the door just enough to see his face clearly. "It's 4:30 in the morning," I said, my voice so calm it didn't sound like mine. "Interesting how you suddenly found time to race home." "Baby, please." "Don't!" My fingers tightened around the edge of the door. "You were supposed to be at Jennifer's. You sent me a sketchy text at 4 a.m., and now you're on my porch looking like you just snuck out of somewhere you shouldn't have been." His mouth opened, closed, and in that tiny silence, I felt something inside me click shut. Some decisions can't be undone. And some people show you exactly who they are the moment they think nobody's watching. I'm Linda, 32. The kind of woman people describe as put together, mostly because I learned early that if I didn't hold myself upright, no one else would do it for me. I work in corporate, strategy and client presentations, the world of clean slides, clean outfits, clean smiles, the world where you learn to breathe through panic and still say, "Let's align on next steps." It pays well enough. It's stable. But it also builds a special kind of exhaustion that crawls under your skin and makes your apartment feel like a second job. And Ethan used to be my relief from all of that. We met 8 years ago at a friend's housewarming party. I was standing near the kitchen island, pretending I enjoyed small talk, when he walked up with 2 cups in his hands. "Your face says you want to escape," he said, offering me one. "So I brought you an exit plan." I laughed. Real laughter. The kind that surprised me because it felt like it came from a part of me that hadn't been used in a while. "What's the plan?" I asked. "We stand here," he said, nodding toward the crowd like a spy. "And if anyone tries to trap you in a conversation about their crypto portfolio, you look at me and I'll fake a phone call. You're welcome." It was corny. It was also considerate. Ethan had this easy confidence back then. Gentle, playful. He listened like he wasn't waiting for his turn to talk. He didn't do that thing most men do, where they scan the room while you're speaking, looking for someone more interesting. When I told him I was working on a big promotion and felt like I was drowning, he didn't fix me. He just said, "That sounds heavy. Do you want advice, or do you want a burger in silence?" I chose the burger. That's how it started. Not fireworks. Comfort. Warmth. The feeling of being seen without having to perform. Our first year together was simple. Sunday mornings at cheap diners, late-night grocery runs, him bringing me coffee when I stayed up too late prepping for a meeting, me folding his laundry even when he insisted he could do it himself. Tiny acts that made a relationship feel like a home. When he proposed, it was Ethan. Thoughtful, low drama. He'd planned a weekend trip, one of those places with quiet cabins and too many stars in the sky. After dinner, he took my hand and said, "I don't want a life where I come home to anyone else." He pulled out the ring. Not flashy, just elegant, like he'd chosen something that matched me, not his ego. I remember staring at it, then at his face. My throat tightened. "Yes," I whispered, and then louder, because he looked terrified. "Yes, Ethan." We got married 6 months later. Jennifer was there, his sister, sniffling in the front row like she was watching a romantic movie. His mom, Carol, cried so hard her mascara bled. His dad looked proud in that quiet, restrained way older men do when emotions scare them. For a while we were good. Not perfect, no marriage is, but good. We built routines. I handled most of the planning because that's who I am. Ethan handled the repairs because he liked feeling useful. We'd argue about silly things. Whether the thermostat should be set to 72 or 68. Whether the dishwasher should be loaded the right way. Whether we were really going to spend money on a couch that cost more than my first car. And then, somewhere along the line, the tone changed. It wasn't one big event, it was slow. Ethan's attention became inconsistent. He'd be sweet for a week, attentive, affectionate, present. And then suddenly he'd go distant like a switch flipped. He started going out more. Just blowing off steam. Just work stuff. Just catching up. At first I didn't mind. I didn't want to be the wife who polices her husband's life. I was proud of being the cool kind of partner, the one who trusted. But trust isn't something you declare once and then never touch again. It's something you maintain, like a living thing. And I started feeling mine getting starved. 2 months ago, the little changes began stacking. Ethan started caring about his appearance in a way that didn't match the excuses he gave. He'd iron a shirt for a casual hangout. He'd wear cologne he hadn't touched in years. He started going to the gym randomly. Then suddenly it wasn't random at all. It was patterned. His phone stopped being a phone and became a vault. Face down, always. If it buzzed, his whole body reacted. Tiny flinch, quick glance, immediate swipe. If I asked who it was, he'd answer too fast, too casual, like he was reading from a script. And the showering, God. That became the part that made my stomach twist the most. He'd walk in and head straight to the bathroom like the house itself was dirtying him. Once I tried to hug him at the door. Just instinct. Just love. He stepped back. "Babe, I'm sweaty," he said quickly. "Let me shower first." But he didn't smell sweaty. He smelled like air-conditioned spaces and someone else's perfume that he tried to bury under soap. Then came the fights. Not the normal kind where two adults disagree and find their way back. No, these were sudden, sharp, pointless. "You never listen," he snapped once because I asked him to confirm dinner plans. "You're always controlling," he said another time, because I reminded him to pay the electric bill. And the moment he said controlling, I remember standing in the kitchen, holding a dish towel, thinking, since when does basic responsibility become control? But I didn't confront the larger thing. I didn't say the word I was afraid to say, affair. Because saying it out loud would turn suspicion into reality. Because part of me still wanted the world where Ethan was just stressed, just drifting, just lost, and would find his way back to me. That's the ugly truth about loving someone. You can see the cliff and still convince yourself the road will curve away. So when he told me yesterday he was going to Jennifer's place for the weekend, I smiled and nodded like I believed him. I even kissed him goodbye at the door. "Have fun," I said, my voice light. He kissed my cheek, quick, distracted. "I'll be home Sunday morning," he promised, already half turned away. And I watched him leave with that hollow feeling in my chest, the one that had been growing for weeks. By the time that 4 a.m. text lit up my phone, I wasn't discovering betrayal. I was finally being forced to stop denying it. After I cracked the door open and saw Ethan standing there, unraveled, desperate, still smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't mine, I didn't feel the explosion everyone imagines betrayal comes with. I felt clarity, a cold, focused kind that makes your hands steady and your voice quiet. "Please," he whispered again, pressing his face toward the gap in the door like proximity alone could fix things. "You don't understand what happened." "I understand perfectly," I said. "You were supposed to be at Jennifer's, you weren't, and now you're here. It's not what you think." That sentence, I'd heard it in movies, in stories other women told me over wine. I never thought I'd hear it directed at me, spoken by the man I trusted with my body, my routines, my future. "Then enlighten me," I said, "because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like you got caught." His eyes filled instantly, tears spilling over in a way that would have shattered me a year ago. "I was helping someone," he said. "A friend had a crisis." "At 4 a.m, I replied evenly. "Yes." "What kind of crisis?" He hesitated. And that hesitation, the pause before the lie, is where everything cracked open. She needed someone to talk to," he finally said. "Her boyfriend dumped her. She was falling apart." "Which friend?" Another pause. "Rachel." I almost laughed. "Rachel moved to Seattle 6 months ago." His face went pale. I meant Amanda. I got confused." "Interesting," I said. "What did Amanda need help with?" "She was having a panic attack. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think straight." I tilted my head, studying him. "So at 4 a.m, Amanda called you instead of 911, instead of her boyfriend, instead of literally anyone else." He was crying openly now. "Please, Linda, just let me inside. Let me explain properly." "You've had 30 minutes to rehearse," I said. "This is seriously the best story you came up with?" Lights were flicking on in neighboring houses. Curtains shifted. I could feel the street waking up around us, drawn by the spectacle of a man unraveling on my porch. "Perfect. Let them see." "I'm telling you the truth," he insisted. "No," I said softly. "You're really not, and we both know it." I started to close the door. He shoved his shoulder against it, panic sharp in his eyes. "Where am I supposed to go?" I looked at him, truly looked at him, and realized something else. He wasn't afraid of losing me. He was afraid of being exposed. "Back to wherever you just came from," I said. "Or maybe start being honest for once." He slid down the doorframe, sobbing, begging. And for the first time, I noticed how the begging wasn't about remorse. It was about control, about damage management, about keeping his life intact. "Fine," I said finally. 5 minutes. His head snapped up. "Inside?" "No." I shook my head. "Right here, on the porch." He wiped his face with his hand, smearing mascara from tears he'd probably already shed somewhere else. "Amanda called me around 1 a.m, he started quickly. "She was having a breakdown about her job." "And stop right there," I said, raising a hand. He froze. "Amanda works night shift at the hospital," I continued. "She's been on nights for 2 years. Why would she be freaking out about work at 1 a.m. when that's literally when her shift starts?" His mouth opened, closed. "Also," I added calmly, "Amanda's been dating that paramedic guy for almost a year. Pretty serious relationship. So when exactly did this mysterious breakup happen?" I got confused," he stammered. "No," I said. "You needed more time to invent a better lie." A car rolled slowly past, Mr. Henderson heading to his early shift. He stared. I waved. Ethan whispered, "This is humiliating." "Is it?" I asked. I hadn't noticed. He looked up at me with those eyes that used to melt me. "I know how this looks," he said, "but I'm telling you the truth." "Tell me," I said. "How does it look from my perspective?" He swallowed. Like I was cheating on you." "Exactly. But I wasn't." "Then where were you?" "With Amanda." "Great," I said. "Give me her number so I can call her right now." Panic flared across his face. "She's probably asleep." "She was awake enough to have a crisis," I replied. "I'm sure she won't mind." "I don't have her number memorized." I laughed then, a sharp, incredulous sound. "You don't have Amanda's number memorized?" I asked. "Amanda who's been your friend since college? Amanda who was a groomswoman at our wedding?" His shoulders sagged. I glanced past him. "Where's your car?" "What?" "You drove to Jennifer's yesterday. Where's your car?" He turned slowly. It was sitting in the driveway. Exactly where it always was. "I got up around midnight to get water," I said quietly. "Your car was here. I figured you took an Uber. Seemed responsible." His entire face drained of color. "So," I continued, "if your car was here all night and you were supposedly across town, how exactly did you get back and forth?" He shook visibly. "I can explain that part." "I'm sure you can," I said. You're very creative. I leaned closer. But here's the thing. I already called Jennifer. The sound he made then wasn't a word. It was pure collapse. She hasn't seen you in almost a month, I continued. And she said you canceled plans with her yesterday morning. Something about an important situation. He sank onto the concrete steps, sobbing. I crouched to his level. So let's try this one last time, I said. Where were you? And this time maybe consider the truth. He stared at the ground, shaking. He stopped. Yes? I can't say it. Can't tell the truth, I asked, or can't face the consequences. He looked up then, and for the first time I saw real fear. If I tell you, he whispered, you'll never forgive me. If you don't tell me, I replied, there's nothing left to forgive. I stood. This conversation ends here. You can spend the night wherever you spent the last 4 hours. He took a shuddering breath. I was with someone else. There it was. And strangely, hearing it didn't break me. It freed me. I was with someone else. The words hung between us like smoke after an explosion. Quiet, toxic, impossible to take back. I stood there, my hands resting against the doorframe, feeling oddly grounded. My knees didn't buckle, my chest didn't seize. It was like my body had already mourned this moment weeks ago, and now my mind was simply catching up. There we go, I said softly. See how much easier honesty is. Ethan stayed seated on the concrete step, his head bowed, shoulders shaking like everything he'd been holding up had finally collapsed. It's not what you're thinking, he said weakly. I let out a slow breath. Let me guess. It just happened. You didn't plan it. You were feeling vulnerable. She was there. One thing led to another. I counted on my fingers as I spoke, my voice steady. Did I miss any of the classics? He looked up at me, stunned. How are you so calm right now? Because I'm not surprised, I replied. I already told you that. What does that even mean? I leaned back against the doorframe, the wood cool against my spine. It means the late night started about 2 months ago. Your phone living face down became permanent 3 weeks ago. The sudden gym obsession started last month. Very impressive consistency, by the way. His mouth fell open. Oh, and the shopping trips, I continued. For someone who used to buy everything online, you sure started enjoying those long Saturday mall runs, always coming home with bags from boutiques I'd never heard of. You were watching me, he said, almost accusingly. I was married to you, I answered. That's not surveillance, that's noticing. His tears fell silently now. I noticed how you styled your hair differently on certain days, I went on. How you jumped in the shower the second you got home from these errands. How you suddenly needed to charge your phone in the other room instead of on the nightstand like always. He wiped his face with both hands, breathing hard. And the fights, I added. The stupid ones. The ones you picked so you could storm out angry and feel justified. He nodded miserably. 2 weeks ago, I said, you lost your mind because I loaded the dishwasher wrong. We argued for 40 minutes. You left and didn't come back until midnight. His shoulders slumped. That was the night I knew, I continued quietly, because in 8 years of marriage, you've never cared about the dishwasher, not once. But you needed an excuse to leave angry, didn't you? I'm so sorry, he whispered. For which part? I asked. The cheating, the lying, or getting caught? He didn't answer. So, I said, who is she? Does it really matter? It matters to me, I replied. I'd like to know who my husband chose over our marriage. He swallowed hard. Her name is Amanda. My lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Amanda, I repeated. Of course. He flinched. Don't do that. Do what? Make it sound small. Oh, I'm not, I said. I'm just realizing something. What? If you were going to destroy our marriage, I said calmly, you could have at least picked someone impressive, someone who made me think, I get it. His eyes filled again. You're being cruel. No, I corrected. I'm being honest. I pulled my phone from my pocket. Speaking of honesty, I should probably call her boyfriend. His head snapped up. Please don't. Why not? It'll ruin everything. Everything's already ruined, I said. You ruined it when you made your choice. He stood abruptly, panic radiating off him. Tonight was one time, just tonight. How many other times were there? That's it, I swear. How long have you been seeing her? He looked away. How long, Ethan? 6 weeks. 6 weeks of what? I asked. Texting, coffee, or 6 weeks of this? He stopped. Tonight was the first time we actually slept together. But emotionally, I said, you've been cheating for 6 weeks. He nodded. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen? I asked. Walk me through your plan. Were you going to leave me, or just keep sneaking around forever? I don't know, he said helplessly. You didn't know for 6 straight weeks? I asked. That's a long time to be confused. My phone buzzed in my hand. I glanced at the screen. "That's my lawyer," I said calmly. His eyes widened. "Your lawyer?" "I called him right after I called Jennifer," I replied. "Apparently some people answer messages at 4 in the morning." "You called a lawyer before talking to me?" "I called a lawyer after you texted me," I corrected, because I knew exactly what that text meant. "What if you were wrong?" he asked desperately. "What if it really was an emergency?" "Then you would have answered my calls," I said. "Any of them." He sank back down onto the step, completely defeated. "He wants to meet at 9, I continued. "I should probably get some sleep." "You can't just," he began. "I can," I said, "and I am." "What are we going to do now?" "I know what I'm going to do," I said, opening the door wider. "I'm going to divorce you." He broke then, fully, crying, gasping, begging. 8 years, he sobbed. "You're just throwing it away." "I'm not throwing anything away," I said quietly. "You already did." I turned back into the house. Behind me, his voice cracked apart in the darkness. I didn't slam the door. That surprised even me. I closed it slowly, deliberately, the click of the lock sounding final, without being dramatic. My hand stayed on the knob for a second longer than necessary, not because I was wavering, but because my body was catching up to what my mind had already decided. On the other side, Ethan's breathing was loud and uneven. I could hear him pacing, crying, talking to himself. Inside, the house was quiet. Too quiet. I leaned my forehead against the wood and closed my eyes. My heart was beating fast, but not wildly. It was the kind of rhythm I get before walking into a difficult boardroom. Controlled panic, sharpened focus. Okay, I told myself, this is happening. I walked into the kitchen, filled a glass with water, and took small, measured sips like I was grounding myself after a shock. My hands were steady. That scared me more than if they'd been shaking. Most people imagine betrayal as this explosive thing, screaming, throwing objects, collapsing into sobs. But what I felt was something colder. Assessment. My mind kept replaying the last 2 months, not emotionally, but clinically. Like I was auditing a failed project. Where did it start? What did I miss? What assumptions did I make that weren't supported by evidence? I hated that part of myself in that moment, the part that analyzed instead of cried. But it was also the part that had kept me alive and functional my entire adult life. A knock rattled the door. "Linda," Ethan said hoarsely, "please, we need to talk more." I stayed where I was. "We are talking," I replied. "You cheated, you lied, you got caught." "But what about us?" His voice cracked. "What about 8 years?" That did it. Not enough to make me cry, but enough to make me sit down. I lowered myself into one of the kitchen chairs, gripping the edge of the table. "I've been asking myself that for weeks," I said through the door. "I just didn't know it yet." Silence. Then, softer, "I felt like we were just roommates." I closed my eyes. "There it is," I said. "That's the part you should have said to me, not to someone else." I didn't know how. "You knew how to text her," I replied. "You knew how to lie to me. You knew how to make time." His breathing hitched. I wasn't thinking clearly. "No," I said quietly. "You weren't thinking honestly." Another pause. "Can we at least talk about fixing this?" he asked. "Counseling, therapy, whatever it takes." I leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling. "What exactly would we be fixing?" I asked. "Your ability to resist temptation, or my ability to trust someone who lied to my face for 6 weeks?" "I'll do anything," he said quickly. "Will you?" I asked. "Because 30 minutes ago, you were still protecting her." That landed. He didn't respond right away. "Begging me not to call her boyfriend," I continued. "That wasn't remorse. That was damage control." "I was scared," he whispered. "Of what?" "Of losing everything." I stood up and walked back to the door, my bare feet cold against the floor. "You didn't lose everything tonight," I said. "You gambled everything 6 weeks ago." Another knock, softer this time. "Linda, please, just let me in. I have nowhere to go." I rested my palm against the door, not opening it. "Then you should have thought about that," I said, "before you chose to go somewhere else." My phone buzzed in my hand. I looked at the screen. Carol, his mother. It was barely 5 in the morning. I stared at the name, then glanced at the door, where Ethan had gone quiet again. He knew who was calling. I could feel it. I answered and put it on speaker. "Hello, Carol." "Linda?" Her voice was tight with worry. "Emma, Ethan, called me crying. She said you locked him out of the house. What's going on?" I exhaled slowly. "Did Ethan tell you why?" I asked calmly. "He said you had a fight." "Did he mention where he was at 4 a.m.? I asked. Silence. "Did he mention he's been having an affair for 6 weeks? A sharp inhale on the other end. "That's not—" Carol stopped herself. "Is that true, Ethan?" I watched the door as if I could see through it. Yes, he said faintly. Oh, Carol whispered. I didn't feel satisfaction, just a strange, hollow quiet. Carol, I said evenly, I'm meeting with a lawyer this morning. This isn't being done out of anger. It's being done because trust, once broken like this, doesn't come back. I understand, she said after a moment. Her voice was heavy with disappointment. I'm so sorry this happened to you. Thank you, I said, and I meant it. She addressed Ethan next. Come home. Your father and I need to talk to you. When the call ended, Ethan slid down the door again. Even my own mother is disappointed in me, he said hoarsely. She should be, I replied. So should you. There was a long stretch of silence. I realized then that I wasn't asking why anymore. I wasn't bargaining. I wasn't blaming myself. I was already on the other side of the decision, standing in the aftermath, steady, wounded, but unbroken. And that realization scared him far more than any shouting ever could. By 6:00 a.m., the sky outside had shifted from black to a dull, bruised gray. I'd showered, dressed, and pulled my hair into a low, neat knot, the same way I do before difficult meetings. Not because I cared how I looked for Ethan, but because structure was the only thing keeping my thoughts from spiraling. I was sitting at the dining table, reviewing documents for my lawyer appointment, when headlights swept across the living room walls. One car, then another, then a third. I looked out the window and felt a strange calm settle over me. Ethan's parents, his sister Jennifer with her husband Tom, and Uncle Dan, who apparently believed being divorced twice qualified him to mediate marital collapse. They were already arguing on the lawn. Carol was gesturing sharply, her disappointment visible even from a distance. Jennifer's posture was rigid, arms crossed, jaw tight. Tom stood slightly behind her, silent, observing. Uncle Dan was doing what he always did, talking too much, trying to smooth something that didn't want smoothing. Ethan stood in the middle of it all like a scolded child, still in that wrinkled shirt, eyes swollen, hands shaking. I watched through the glass for a moment longer than necessary. Then I opened the door before they could knock. Good morning, I said evenly. Uncle Dan stepped forward like he owned the moment. We need to talk. Actually, I replied, I have a lawyer appointment in a couple of hours, but I can listen for 5 minutes. Carol glanced at Ethan, then back at me. Can we come inside? This doesn't need to be a public spectacle. I looked at Ethan, standing there in the clothes he'd cheated in, surrounded by people who wanted me to make things easier for him. 5 minutes, I said, stepping aside. They filed into my living room. Ethan sat on the couch, the one we'd picked out together 3 years ago. The rest remained standing, like a courtroom that hadn't decided who was on trial yet. Look, Uncle Dan began, clasping his hands. Marriages go through rough patches. This doesn't have to be the end. Doesn't it? I asked calmly, because from where I'm standing, my husband chose another woman over our marriage for 6 weeks. People make mistakes, he said quickly. Uncle Dan, I interrupted, my voice polite but firm. Didn't you cheat on Aunt Patricia? And then on your second wife? His face flushed. That's not relevant. It's completely relevant, I said. You're asking me to take advice from someone who's been in Ethan's position twice. Jennifer spoke up sharply. He's right. Stay out of this. Carol shot her a warning look. Jennifer. No, Jennifer said, stepping forward. Emma, Ethan, screwed up. Big time. And now he has to live with it. But they love each other, Uncle Dan insisted. I almost laughed. Love? I asked quietly. If Ethan loved me, he wouldn't have spent 6 weeks sneaking around with someone else. Tom finally spoke. Who is she? Ethan flinched. A coworker, I answered for him. Someone he chose to protect until the very last second. Carol looked devastated. In our day, couples worked through these things. In your day, I said gently, women didn't always have the option to leave, and men didn't always face consequences. But you're throwing away 8 years, she said softly. I'm not throwing anything away, I replied. Ethan already did. Ethan finally spoke, his voice shaking. It's completely over now. I ended it. Did you? I asked. He looked at me. Because 2 hours ago, I continued, you were still begging me not to call her boyfriend. That's not someone who's done choosing. I was scared, he whispered. Scared of consequences, Jennifer said flatly. Uncle Dan tried again. Maybe you should take time apart. Let emotions cool down. We are taking time apart, I said. It's called divorce. Carol inhaled sharply. That's so permanent. So is betrayal, Jennifer replied before I could. Tom nodded slowly. For what it's worth, I think you're handling this exactly right. Jennifer glanced at him, then back at me. Me too. Carol looked between them, conflicted. What exactly do you all want from me? I asked. Silence. To forgive, Carol said finally. I already have, I replied. Forgiveness doesn't mean staying married to someone who broke our trust. That's not how marriage works, Uncle Dan said. Actually, I said calmly, that's exactly how it works. When one person breaks the agreement, the other gets to decide whether to stay. Ethan was crying again. I'll do anything. Counseling, therapy, whatever you want. What I want, I said, is a husband who didn't cheat on me. And that's no longer an option. Carol stood. You're being very cold. I met her eyes. If a woman came to you and said her husband had been cheating on her for weeks, lying to her face, what would you tell her? She didn't answer. You'd tell her she deserves better, I continued. You'd tell her to leave. That's different, she murmured. How? I asked. Because I'm family? Or because I'm the one who was betrayed? Jennifer stepped forward again, voice sharp. This is ridiculous. Ethan, you lied. You cheated. You got caught. Stop asking everyone else to clean up your mess. Ethan shook his head. I didn't mean for it to be like this. And then he said it. She's not a bad person. The room went dead silent. Tom actually laughed, a short, incredulous sound. Did you just defend the woman you cheated with? He asked. Ethan's face went white. I didn't mean... Yes, I said calmly. You did, and thank you. Carol covered her mouth. Ethan... Jennifer shook her head in disbelief. I can't even look at you right now. Uncle Dan cleared his throat. I think we should all take a step back. No, I said firmly. I think we're done. I looked at Ethan. You can pack some clothes and go with your parents. You can't just kick me out, he said weakly. I can, I replied. This house is in my name. We bought it before we got married. You never wanted to deal with the paperwork. He remembered. I could see it in his eyes. So this is it? Carol asked. This is it, I said. I file for divorce. We divide what's fair, and we move on. Ethan stood shakily. Can I at least pack some things? Of course, I said. Take what you need. As he walked upstairs, Carol lingered. I failed him somehow, she said quietly. No, I replied. You raised him with values. He chose not to follow them. When the door closed behind them, the house felt still. Not empty, just honest. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I knew, deep in my bones, that I wasn't losing my life. I was reclaiming it. The house didn't feel empty after they left. It felt exposed, like a stage after the lights go out. Furniture still in place, air still warm, but the illusion gone. I stood in the living room for a long moment, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the wall clock, the faint echo of footsteps that no longer belonged to anyone but me. This was the moment no one prepares you for. Not the confrontation, not the shouting, not even the begging. This, the silence that follows certainty. I sank onto the edge of the couch, the same couch Ethan had been sitting on minutes earlier, crying, promising, unraveling. The cushions still held his shape. I pressed my palm against the fabric and felt a sudden, sharp ache in my chest. Not love. Loss. 8 years doesn't disappear just because trust does. My mind betrayed me then, flooding me with images I hadn't invited. Lazy Sundays with his head in my lap, his hand squeezing mine during my first big promotion dinner, the way he used to whisper, "I've got you," when I was spiraling. I let myself feel it, not because I wanted him back, but because pretending it didn't hurt would have been another lie layered on top of his. I curled my fingers into the couch and finally, my breath broke. One quiet sob slipped out, then another. No screaming, no drama, just the kind of crying that comes from a place so deep it feels almost private. Was I not enough? The thought crept in despite everything I knew, despite logic, despite evidence, despite the clarity I'd fought so hard to hold on to. I stood and walked to the bedroom. The bed was still made on his side, his pillow untouched. I sat down and stared at it like it might answer me if I waited long enough. 2 months. 6 weeks. How long had he been lying next to me thinking about someone else? That question hurt more than the cheating itself. I went to the bathroom and caught my reflection in the mirror. Hair neat, face calm, eyes tired but steady. I looked like a woman who had handled a crisis well. I didn't feel like her. I felt like someone standing on the edge of a cliff, realizing the ground behind her had already fallen away. What if I was wrong? The doubt whispered now that the witnesses were gone. What if people really could change? What if this was fixable? What if I was throwing away something irreplaceable because I was too proud to try? I pressed my hands to the counter, grounding myself. No, I told myself, you didn't choose this, he did. Still, the loneliness crept in. The future I'd pictured, shared holidays, inside jokes that lasted decades, growing old with someone who knew my worst days, collapsed under the weight of reality. Not in flames, in silence. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. I know I don't deserve this, but please don't do this. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I stared at the message for a long time. This was the darkest part. Not the betrayal. The temptation to rescue the man who had set the fire just because I was used to being the one who fixed things. I deleted the text, sat back down on the bed, and let myself feel the full weight of it, alone, exhausted, grieving something that was already gone. Because before you rise, before you reclaim anything, you have to reach the bottom. And that morning, in the quiet house we once shared, I did. I didn't sleep. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling while the house shifted from night to morning, shadows thinning, light creeping in like it was testing whether it was welcome. My mind replayed everything, not in chaos, but in order. And somewhere between exhaustion and clarity, something changed. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even relief. It was recognition. I realized I wasn't standing at the edge of a cliff. I was standing in the middle of a doorframe, one life behind me, another waiting quietly ahead. At 8:15 a.m., I made coffee. The smell grounded me. Ordinary, familiar, real. I opened my laptop and reviewed the documents I'd already prepared weeks ago. Budgets, account statements, property records, things I'd gathered instinctively without knowing why. Somewhere inside me, I'd been preparing for this long before Ethan confessed. That realization hit hard. I hadn't been blindsided. I had been waking up. At 8:42 a.m., my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. I answered. Linda? A woman asked cautiously. This is Brittany. The name landed with quiet force. Ethan's affair partner's girlfriend. Yes, I said, my voice steady. This is Linda. There was a pause, a shaky breath. I just wanted to let you know I found out. About everything. I know, I said gently. Silence stretched between us. Not awkward, just heavy with shared understanding. He didn't tell me, she said finally. I figured it out myself. Phone records, messages, receipts. Of course. He's done this before, she continued. You weren't the first, just the most serious. I closed my eyes, not in pain, but in confirmation. I'm sorry, she added quickly, for everything. I didn't know he was married until last night. I believe you, I said, and I did. She hesitated. I confronted him at work, in front of people. I didn't mean to make a scene, but I couldn't hold it in. That's understandable, I replied. He's been fired, she said. HR called it a hostile work environment. There it was. Not revenge. Consequences. I'm not calling for sympathy, Brittany added. I just didn't want you thinking I stayed silent. Thank you for telling me, I said. That matters. After we hung up, I sat there for a long moment, phone resting in my palm. And that was it. The final piece. Not because Ethan suffered. Not because the affair blew up. But because the truth had surfaced without me chasing it. I didn't have to expose him. I didn't have to destroy anyone. I just had to step aside and let reality do what it always does eventually. At 9:00 a.m., I walked into my lawyer's office. He listened quietly as I explained. No theatrics, no hysteria, no blame spirals. When I finished, he nodded. You're making the right decision, he said simply. And for the first time since this began, I didn't question it. When I left his office, the sun was fully up. The city was awake. People were going about their lives, unaware that mine had split cleanly in two before and after. I sat in my car for a moment before starting the engine, and I said it out loud. I choose myself. Not angrily. Not dramatically. Just clearly. That was the turning point. Not when Ethan cheated. Not when he confessed. But when I stopped asking whether I was allowed to leave and started understanding that I didn't need permission. The aftermath didn't arrive with fireworks. It arrived quietly, methodically, like gravity finally doing its job. 3 months passed. Not quickly, but cleanly. The divorce was finalized 2 weeks ago. No courtroom drama, no ugly accusations. Ethan signed everything without contesting it. His lawyer must have told him the truth I already knew. He had no ground to stand on. The house stayed mine. It always had been, legally. We'd bought it before we married. I'd asked him, more than once, if he wanted his name added to the deed. He'd waved it off. Paperwork bored him. Commitment, it turned out, bored him too. My retirement account stayed mine. Most of our assets did, not because I took anything from him, but because he'd never really brought anything in. Ethan moved back in with his parents. That lasted 3 weeks. His father got tired of the crying. His mother got tired of lying to friends. Eventually, he rented a small apartment across town. Same job, same desk, same building, where everything had unraveled. And work? Work became hell for him. Brittany hadn't exposed the affair out of revenge. She'd exposed it because she was done protecting someone who never protected her. She brought receipts, messages, photos, hotel confirmations. Ethan wasn't the first, just the most careless. HR didn't care about intentions. They cared about liability. Creating a hostile work environment came with consequences. He wasn't fired, but he might as well have been. He was removed from his team, transferred to another department, stripped of projects. Conversations stopped when he entered rooms. Trust evaporated. People don't forget quietly. And the woman he chose? She didn't stay. Within 2 weeks of the fallout, she'd moved on. Someone new, someone easier, someone who didn't come with consequences attached. Ethan tried to reach out to her. She blocked him. He tried to reach out to me. Texts, emails, even messages through Jennifer. I'm in therapy. I'm trying to understand why I did this. I don't expect forgiveness. I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, but because there was nothing left to say. Jennifer called me once, about a month after the divorce. I'm sorry, she said immediately. He begged me to check on you, to see if you'd talk to him. And? I asked gently. I told him he was delusional, she replied. You've moved on. He needs to, too. She was right. I had moved on. Not in the way people assume. I wasn't dating. I wasn't replacing him. I was rebuilding. I redecorated the house, slowly, intentionally. Removed furniture that felt like compromise. Bought things that reflected me. My taste. My rhythm. I reconnected with friends I'd drifted from during the marriage. People Ethan never liked. Too loud, too casual, too real. Turns out they were just honest. I started hiking. Cooking properly instead of surviving on takeout, working out not to change my body, but to release the tension I'd been carrying for years. Work flourished. Without the constant undercurrent of suspicion, my focus sharpened. Last month, I got a promotion, a raise that covered every expense of living alone, and then some. The house felt bigger without him, but it also felt lighter. No more arguments about nothing. No more walking on eggshells. No more decoding moods or lies. Just quiet. Honest, uncomplicated peace. One Saturday afternoon, my neighbor Steve knocked on the door. Lunch? He asked. My wife's out of town and I'm tired of my own cooking. I smiled. Sure. As we walked to his truck, he glanced at me. How are you doing? Genuinely, I said. Better than good. No regrets? None. And the marriage? I thought for a moment. I don't regret it, I said. It taught me what I won't tolerate, and I'm grateful it ended when it did instead of dragging on. That night, I grilled dinner on my back patio as the sun dipped low. My phone rang. Carol. I almost didn't answer, but I did. I wanted to apologize again, she said softly. For trying to pressure you. You were right, about everything. I understand why you tried, I replied. You were protecting your son. Yes, she said, but you deserve better than what he gave you. After we hung up, I stood there for a long moment, looking out at my yard, my neighborhood, my life. Ethan thought sending that text at 4:00 a.m. would let him control the story, minimize the damage, keep everything intact. He was wrong. The truth doesn't need help. It just needs time. That night, after the call with Carol, I stood alone on my patio as the sky deepened into blue-black, the air warm against my skin. The grill clicked softly as it cooled. Somewhere down the street, someone laughed. A car door shut. Life moved on. Uninterrupted, indifferent to the way my world had once shattered and then quietly rebuilt itself. And that's when it fully landed. Nothing was missing. For a long time, I thought healing would feel dramatic, like triumph, like closure wrapped in a perfect bow. It didn't. Healing felt like breathing without checking your chest first, like sleeping through the night without waiting for a phone to buzz, like coming home and knowing exactly who would be there, me. Ethan thought the worst thing that could happen was losing his marriage. He was wrong. The worst thing would have been staying in a relationship where I had to shrink my instincts, soften my boundaries, and silence the part of myself that knew. I didn't win because he suffered. I didn't heal because he regretted anything. I healed because I stopped negotiating with betrayal. People ask sometimes, quietly, carefully, if I ever miss him. I miss the man I thought he was, but I don't miss the woman I was becoming while trying to keep him. There's a difference. Here's what I learned, what I wish someone had told me years ago. Love doesn't ask you to abandon your clarity. Trust doesn't require blindness. And forgiveness does not mean self-betrayal. When someone shows you who they are in the dark, believe them, even if it breaks your heart. Especially then. Because choosing yourself doesn't make you cruel. It makes you free. That text he sent at 4:00 a.m. was meant to buy him time, control, distance from consequences. Instead, it gave me something far more valuable. The truth. No explanation needed. Stay with whoever you're with. Consider yourself single. Sending that message wasn't the end of my marriage. It was the beginning of my life.